So we're back, and it's COMP391, Intro to Game and Simulation, and it's week 11, lesson 11, part, I'm guessing, 5, because we did 1, 2 normal parts, 3 and 4 special supplements from Matt's head, and now we're to part 5, which is back to normal. So we're part 5, right? And, okay, in part 5, we want to make some spawning points. So the first thing to note is, let's think about concepts for a second. We have different layers, right? On the bottom here, there's different layers. We need to spawn everything from different layers as normal, right? I want them to spawn somewhere, which is going to be some kind of plane or playing field, right? For now, let's add a plane in the middle. So I'm going to go mesh plane. I'm going to expand the plane so it fills up my screen, like so, right? Here it is. And then from here, what I want to do is I want to do all the normal game stuff. So I want to just start off a new project. So go multi-texture to GLSL. I want to change this to from Blender Render to Blender Game. Those are a couple changes I want to make. I want to add in some kind of material for my ground and call it ground. So let's rename this thing from plane to ground, just like we're doing a new game. And we're going to do add a material for my ground. And it's going to be brown because I like to make brown ground. And we'll make it so it's darker down. There's a brown ground, and it has no specularity. There we go. Brown ground, no specularity. All right, so here I am. I've got this light source, and I'm going to pull this light source back over here. And if you notice, I also want to align things from a game perspective so that it is aligned with the right arrow going to the right and the top arrow going to the top. Like this, right? That's the one thing I want. Okay, that's cool. What I do want also is some kind of object to spawn. So I need a spawning point. So let's create that. So I'm going to go Shift A. I'm going to do a new empty. That's what I'm going to add in, an empty. And I'm going to just do plane axis. I could do it plane axis, arrow, circle, cube, whatever I want. But I think what I want to do for now is just to make it simple is a plane axis. There it is. Okay, so plane axis. It's in the middle, right, of my spawn point. So let's leave it right in the middle of my area, or put it to one side. So we'll put it right in the middle front. Take a look where it appears. It actually appears within the plane. I don't want that. I want it to come a little higher and a little inward so that it doesn't. So when my sphere appears, it appears right here. Are you with me? So there's my spawn point, and I'm going to call this thing, instead of empty, we'll call it spawn. Okay, so there's my spawn and my ground. Now I need to create an object to put there. So let's create it first on this layer, and then let's put it to the other layer. So I'm going to go Shift A. I'm going to create a mesh, which is going to be, I'm going to make it an Ecosphere instead. Doesn't matter. You can use whatever you want. I'm going to use an Ecosphere right now. Here's my Ecosphere. And my Ecosphere has, if you notice on the left-hand side, we haven't really talked about this one too much. It says proportional editing. I can enable or disable. I can, from a proportional editing in smooth mode, I can enable or disable. I can also check out different options here in terms of vectors and size and shape and so on. For now, though, I'll leave everything as is, right? That's what this thing is. I could also, when I'm in edit mode, right? I could also subdivide or whatever. The only thing I want to do here for this thing is smooth it. So here I've smoothed my Ecosphere, so it's a little rough and bumpy, but it's a little smooth. I can also go into my add modifier, and I want to add a subdivision surface modifier for my thing, which actually makes it a little bit more complex. And if I look in there to see what it looks like, I see that my Ecosphere looks like a sphere, but it's just made up of a bunch of triangles. This is a little bit lighter when it comes to vertices than the other one. If I wanted to get rid of this as an example, if you notice I have much fewer vertices than I normally would, and it still looks fairly smooth. If I want to take the smoothness away, I can go back out and then instead of smoothing, go flat, which gives me this bumpy road kind of idea. I want to make my this object here roll, so I want to make it, instead of a static body or a dynamic body, I want to make it a rigid body so it actually gives it a bit of a roll, right? I'm not going to add collision bounds to the plane, right? But I am going to add collision bounds to this thing, If I make it as a cube from a collision bounds perspective, then it's going to roll around like a cube. If I can change this thing, if I want to make a better collision bounds, I can choose other kinds of collision bounds like sphere, which isn't bad, right, because it's going to roll like a sphere. Or I can make it triangle mesh, which is very good in terms of wrapping this thing up. Let me take a look. Right, so it's much better in terms of our collision bounds, triangle mesh. All right, let's add some other things to it. Let's add some material. So we're going to add a material, and you know what? Let's make this material highly specular. So it's going to be specular, so it shines. And we'll make it so that it is kind of a burnt orange, just to make it a little differently. And very bright. So almost like an orange Ecosphere. Okay. Off the bat, if I don't do anything, we're just testing our object, right? So I'm going to kind of pull back, and I'm going to bring this up higher. And I also want to change my camera view, because right now my camera view is looking at it from this side, and I want to view with my camera. So I'm going to go View. I'm going to Align View, then Align Active Camera to View. And I'm going to pull this back, or zoom in, I mean, and go to my N, and click on Lock Camera to View. And this is all the same stuff we've done before, guys, nothing that's new. Right? And I'm going to just change my perspective so we can see it drop on the ground. Now we're not making a perspective game, I mean a 2D game, we're making just a 3D game for now. But if I press P, I can see it that it drops. Let's see what happens if I actually see some material. There it is. If I press P, it drops down and it lands. Now it starts to roll right away. See how that rolled? It rolled because I added in, first it's a rigid body, and the second thing I made is that it's, I've made it so that it's got, what was that? Convex hull. It's actually triangular. All right, that's one thing. The other thing is I don't have a lot of light right now, so I want to add another light source. So I'm going to go Shift D, and across the Y-axis, I'm going to add another light source over on this side, so I have dual light sources. And let's see how that plays out. I'm going to just rotate it back, my camera on this side again. And again, I'm going to press P for play, and so now it rolls, and you can see how it does roll a little bit, and it kind of lands. Okay, cool. So I've got that rolling thing. If I change my angle for this thing so it rolls down, so I want it to roll towards me all the time on an angle, all right? So right now, if I was to do it, just to test it, I'm going to go rotate across the x-axis, let's say minus 10 degrees. Let's roll away from me. Rotate across the x-axis 10 degrees, so it's going to come towards me. And I'm going to press play, and then now it's going to roll towards me nicely in a very realistic fashion, right? That's where it's going to come. Let's try that again. So P comes down and then drops in, right? And rolls toward me nicely. Okay, cool. So I've got that going on. This is what I want to spawn, this object, right? And I want to spawn it at the spawning point, right? So let's click on the spawning point to see where that is. So here's my spawning point. I got to make sure my spawning point is above the level of my ground, right? It wasn't before. And I'll make it a little bit more above. So it's going to spawn there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spawn every so often. Now, in order for me to spawn this point, I got to call it the enemy, or the whatever I want to call this thing. So let's call this enemy, right? And I want to move this enemy with the M button. I'm going to move it to another layer. So I'll move it to layer 2. So now it exists in this lonely layer over here, right? But it doesn't matter. Okay, cool. So what I want to do is, for now, I'm not going to give it any logic bricks. It's not going to have any life of its own. It's just going to roll down when it gets spawned, right? So the spawning piece is what we want to get right first. Okay, let's go back to layer 1, and let's get out of camera mode and go into perspective mode. User perspective mode, I want to get in there. Okay, here it is. And so what I want to say is when I click on the spawn, here's my spawn point, I'm going to change the bottom layer to make it quick for us today. I'm going to change this thing so from kind of an animation layer, I want to change it so we go logic editor. Here's my logic editor. And then what I want to do is, I'm going to zoom in here so you can see these logic bricks here a little bit. I want to add a sensor. So let's say for the beginning, I want to spawn always. I want to always spawn, right? And let's just see the spawning working. So I'm going to choose an always sensor, which we can change later on. And then my add, I'm going to go add edit object. And what we're going to do is we're going to target the enemy. Here it is. And on the enemy is not going to have anything, no velocity, nothing. I'm not going to impart anything new to it. I'm just going to add the object always, which means every second. It's going to spawn like crazy. Let's try this out, right? And if you notice, hey, wait a minute, it only added one object. How come? Why? What was that? So that's the first thing. The other thing is that it does it, but it doesn't do it unless you, if you click this, it always does it. This one here says the condition is always true. It's in pulse mode, right? So if I put this on now, you're going to get thousands of these objects spawning until my computer crashes, and then they just keep on flowing like forever. And see how it's going to crash? Whoop. Oh, we don't want that to happen, right? That's good. That's what we want, right? We want it to spawn more than once, right? If I use this one and if I use skip and I put in 100, what does skip do? So here's the same thing, and I press P, but I skip 100. Whoop, whoop, whoop. So it's spawning, but it's spawning every 100 milliseconds, or every so often. Take a look now. So let's keep on spawning these little spheres, and it kind of looks neat, right? There we go. So I keep on spawning them. It's regular intervals. Okay, let's try that. Let's go with something even longer. Let's go 500 milliseconds. Right, so we'll press it again. And press it again, P. Now, much slower, right? Is it 500 milliseconds? It's way more than 500 milliseconds. It's almost like 5 seconds. So every 5 seconds or so, or every so often, you've got a bit of a skip that comes. So the skip, if you look and see, if you scroll over, it says number of logic ticks skipped between 2 active pulses. 0 is equal to pulse every logic tick. Okay, so what is my frame rate? Let's take a look at that. So if I go back to my frame rate, I need to look at my world. And if you look at my world, right, my gravity is 9.8, right? And if you look at my frames per second is 60. So 60 frames per second. It skips 500 frames, right? That's what it does, and then it comes on. So it's not quite 600. 600 would be 10 seconds. So that's how much it would be. So it's 500 frames, ticks, as opposed to milliseconds, right? Interesting to know. Let's put our gravity at where I like to put it, like 30. So I think it should be heavier gravity. Let's try this again. So boom, it falls faster, it rolls much faster, and then the other one comes down and it does it again, right? So it'll roll off, and it rolls off down the thing in a physics capacity. It'll keep rolling in the same particular order. It doesn't do it randomly. Okay, but what if I have a faster spawning? So let's go back down to 200 and see what it does there. So we can modify, just from our always, we can modify it so it does more than one tick. If I go back down to 50, like I had it before, and go P, now you'll spawn one on top of the other, and it's much faster, right? So that's less than 1 every second, right? To see 1 a second, it would be 60. So that's 1, it'll skip 60 frames before it produces 1, because we have 60 frames per second. These are good little things to understand, right? So it's counting seconds right now. That's what it's doing, right? And it's producing one of these spheres, if you will, in our game, random game we're making, right? That's going to come at you. Okay. What if I want some randomness? So I don't want this thing to come up all the time, right? In fact, I want it to be always, but I want it also to be random. Okay, let's add a random element. So I'm going to add random, right? And I want to combine it with my always. So only when the random goes off is it going to work. Let's check this out. Let's try this now. P. Bam. Okay, so, well, it's always happening, and it's not skipping. It's not as fast as I'd like, but it's prompting it to do it once in a while. Okay, let's try this out. Turn this on, and press P. Lots of them coming out at like crazy intervals, like mad. It's a little bit random how it comes off, but both of these conditions must be true in order for this to happen. Let's also skip 60 for the randomness. So say skip 60, so the same interval, and then press P. So I got a couple of them coming off at the same time. If You notice it comes off twice. A little bit more randomness happening there. Right? Then nothing for a while, and then some more. Right? See, so it is quite kind of random. If I want to change the random number seed, I can do that. I can change the seed from, if I skim over here, initial seed of the generator, choose 0 for not random. Right? Let's try this out. So bam, and then it comes out again, and then it comes out again. Now here's something. What if I change the intervals for both these things? I got an always generator and I got a random generator. Okay, if I take this thing off and go here, bam, what happens now? I got 2 coming out, got 3 coming out, whatever. Right? What if, here's something. So I took this skip off, right? What if I take this off now? So I do this, take both these off. There's no delay, and try this. What happens? So bang, 1, 2. Take a look now, Igor. 3. So I've got an always generator and I got a random generator. My random generator is set to 1 because 0 says there's no randomness. 1 is an actual random number seed. Right? So now I've got a random interval that this stuff is coming at. Take a look. Okay. Now what if, bear with me now, I want to move this bloody thing, this spawn point, to different positions back and forth. Right? So I want to move it across. I want to animate it. Right? I want to move it across to the left. Right? And then I want to move it across back to the right, and back to the left, and back to the right, and I want you to repeat that movement over and over again. Let's just say. So here's my spawning point, right? This is what I want to do here. Tell me if this is logical or feasible, ladies and gentlemen. I want to take my spawning point now, and I want to start it off at one place, like over here. Right? So here's my spawning point. So way over here. And I want to do it is I want to move this spawning point from here, right? Within 10 frames, I want to move it over here. And when I'm done, I want to move it back. Okay, in order for me to be accurate, I need to note its location. So let's go back and note its location. So the location that I'm moving it from, right, is right now is -6. Let's make it -7 just to be equal. -7, and my y is 7.2. Let's make it 7, so it's a little bit in. And let's say my z is 3.7. Let's make it 4. So it's going to go -7, 7, 4. That's the left, right? I'm going to do this. Over top of this, remember I talked about keyframe animation, right? This is very careful, so you have to watch this. If I press I, which is my insert keyframe, if I hover over my location and press I, I've captured a keyframe from a location. Take a look. That's my first keyframe at frame 1. I've captured my location. I'm not turning anything. Wait. This is the first thing. Now, I'm going to go back because I want to capture my location again at another frame. Right, so let's go back over here to default. Oh, sorry. Let's go back to game logic for a second. There we go. Or to animation. Sorry, I wanted to go to animation. Here's my animation, right? And here's my logic point, my point. And if I go to my first, I notice that I'm spawning. There I am. This is where what it's looking like. I want to move this over, right? I'm going to press an N. Right now I'm at -7, 7, and 4. And then every 10 frames, I want to go back there and back. So by frame 20, I'm back to where I started. I want to be back at -7, 7, and 4. All right, so that's frame 1. Let's move to frame 10. So frame 10, I move there. I move my frame from frame 10. I'm moving over to the other side. So let's see where my position is now. All right, so my x coordinate is now 6. I'll make that 7 to make it even. Right? 7, 7, and 4. That's where it's going to be, right? 7, 7, and 4. At frame 10, 7, 7, and 4. I want to do another what I'm going to call a keyframe. There it is. So frame 10, it goes there, and then by frame 20, it moves back. By frame 20, it moves back, right? So here I am. I'm going to move this to frame 20. Okay, frame 20. I'm going to move this to -7. So I know that's where it's supposed to be, -7, right, by frame 20. and then I'm going to get another keyframe. There we are. So we've got 3 keyframes, where it starts, where it goes over here, and where it comes back in every 10 frames. And I'm going to limit this thing to 20 frames. So instead of 250 frames, it's going to go to 20 frames. That's all it's going to be. 20 frame animation. So this thing is moving back and forth. Now this thing that I've made is actually an animation sequence. It's called the spawn action. We'll leave it as that. We won't name it differently. We know what it is. That's the animation sequence. And it's going to go back and forth. To test it, right, I can just press play. Let's press play and see what happens. Boom, boom, boom. It's going to go back and forth forever. Boom, boom. It's going to keep doing that, right? So my spawning point now is moving all over the place, right? Okay, what happens when I play and I do this animation at the same time? I want to play this animation all the time. I don't want to play it constantly, always.
Always action.
Right? I want to do that all the time. So if I do this, my animation then would spawn at random intervals in different positions now. Let's try this out. Okay, so that's the first thing. And let's try and add that in. So I'm going to go back to my default. Here's my default. Okay, I've got my position going on, and I've got my action. It's another thing I'm going to add in there. It's not just going to spawn this, right? But it's also going to have another action, another always action. So let's add another always. Actually, I have an always. I can just use the same one. I'm just going to add another spawn action. So I'm going to another one, and I want to do an action, and I want to do the spawn action. Now, if I don't do, here's the thing that happens. If I don't do a frame, it says from 0 to 0. What does it do? It does the whole thing, right? If I want to make it go from one frame to the other, if I want to make it bounce, could I go from frame 1 to frame 20? What if I put nothing? What's the default? There's always a default action, right? So if I don't do it, what does it do? Let's leave it as is, and now what I want to do is I want to connect this line to over here, right? Because it's the always is the only one that's acting on that one. The always is a thing that's doing this all the time, right? Let's see what happens if I make this go. So here, and it's here, so it doesn't really move, right? If it was moving, it wouldn't do it there all the time on the corner. It would do it different places, right? So let's try that with the spawning action by going from frame 1 to frame 20. Let's try that out. So frame 1 to frame 20. Okay, I don't see it moving. And the funny thing is I can't see it because I don't know where this spawning point is. I know it's spawning, but I don't see the spawning point moving around a lot. Okay, so how do I check that? Well, there's a couple things to know. The play action is what I'm doing, right? I can loop end, or to the loop end. If I go loop end from 1 to 20, right? Let's see what it does then. Oh. Oh. Right? Oh. Look, that's coming at random places now. Oh. Why? Because now the thing's moving around and it's giving me random locations for my spawn. Right? Take a look. So I'm using a loop end. Okay, if I want to make it more dramatic so you see it more often, right? Let's take a look at that. So now, here's my random seed, right? Here's my always, right? It's happening all the time. My random seed's happening once in a while, so every so often. There's no break. It's just happening randomly. So randomly it's going to come out. There's no skipping or anything like that. And it's coming once in a while, right? Once in a blue moon kind of thing. There's no skipping. If I click this on, right, I can skip the action. So I can choose skip 60 or whatever. Let's try that out now, see what it does. So boom, 2 of them come out at the same time. And it's going to do at different locations, right, at different intervals. Right? There's 2. Right? See how they appear at different places? Because this thing's going back and forth. It's zinging back and forth like this. Every 10 frames, it's going back and forth, random location, really. At the end of the day, it's going to stop wherever it is in a random location. It's going to appear at a random spot, actually a random time, wherever it goes, and with every 10 frames. Right, that's where it's going to appear. Some of them will fall off. And what if I do both of them? If I turn both of them on, then I get one of these, right? So I get two of them, right? I get another couple too, and they spawn. If I want a faster spawn, right? I can go to 20. Let's see what that does, right? Right. So a little bit of a randomness that comes down, right? See? What do you think, Igor? Not bad? Huh? This is an answer? One possibility. But here's the other possibility. If this is... Oh, yeah.
What does make seed in
Seed?
yeah,
If you leave it at 0, it's not random. You have to at least put it to 1.
so
Yeah. If I don't put this on at least 1, right, there's no randomness. 0 if we're not random. It's the initial seed of the generator, right? If I make it 2, right? Look, if I make it 2 and if I go 2 seeds as an example, then if you notice if it's coming on, right? So let's make it 2. It's just a different number seed. Okay, you also want to use a different number seed. It's not that what you're thinking. It's not more. The seed is a different random number sequence. Remember, it's pseudo-random numbers, right? It's not true randomness, right? The way we do true randomness is to simulate randomness is to have different seeds, right, that come out. So if I have more than one spawn point, which I'm going to add right now, follow me with what I'm going to say. More than one spawn point. Once I make more than one spawn point, right, I'm going to change the seed in the spawn points. I'm going to have 3 spawn points, and they're all going to go through each other like this, right? 3 of them are going to come through. And I'm going to change the values here so it's much slower. Like right now it's happening too fast. I'm going to make it so that it happens much slower. So let's go back to what I did before. So I'm going to go to, I'm going to turn this always generator off, right? And this is going to come on every 60 frames and with seed of 1. Let's try this out again. So it's gone back and forth, 1, 2, right? It's going to go back and forth like this in a random location, a random time frame. It's going to come up another one. There's another one on that side. Okay, now I'm going to have not 1 of these, but 3 of them, right? Let's try this out. So here, I got this. Doesn't matter, right? So let's go like this. So Shift D, sorry, and I'm gonna kind of move it across the x-axis only, right? Move it across, and I'm gonna start this one off. I'm gonna create another sequence for this one. I'm gonna kill the animation sequence and start it from here and go to the other side this way. That's this one. That's what this one's gonna do. Leave it here, go here, and move it to 7, right? And what I want to do with this one, this is another spawn point, so this would be spawn 2. I want to keep this stuff going. I don't want to change my logic bricks, but I want to kill my animation sequence, right? And I want to rename this thing from spawn to spawn 2, let's say. Spawn 2. So spawn 1, this is spawn 1. This is spawn 2. Spawn 2 is on the right, right? And I have an animation sequence here that I am going to kill. So here's my spawn action. I'm going to unlink it, and it's gone. So there's no animation, but it doesn't kill this one. The animation sequence for this one is still there. Okay, cool. So my spawn 2 is going to be a couple of different things. One, it's going to go to another layer to get another object. I'm not going to get that same object. I'm going to copy that object, turn it another color, right, and put it to another layer, or maybe the same layer. Doesn't matter.
Can we use the same layer?
Yeah. But I'm going to make it so it's another object. So instead of the orange sphere, it's going to get the red sphere. Whatever, right? So let's try this out. So here's my spawn. Now I want to fix my animation first. So my animation is going to go from here to the left. Now right now it's at 20 frames. I'm going to go back to my animation. I'm going to go back to my first frame or 0th frame. And I'm looking at this particular animation. I'm going to do a keyframe. So there it is. This is my first keyframe at frame 1. I'm going to go to frame 10. And I'm going to move this object to -7. So it's going to be the opposite. So that's going to move over there. And I'm going to record the keyframe. And now I'm going to go to frame 20. And I'm going to go back to location 7. So I know the location, and I'm going to mark this as a keyframe as well. So I've got a new animation altogether. right? I'm going to go back to the default. So spawn 2 has its own animation. Let's take a look at it. It's called spawn 2 action. This one is called spawn action. That's not gonna, that hasn't broken. Let's leave that alone, right? So spawn 2 action is what spawn 2 is going to do. When it goes to action, instead of doing a spawn action, I'm going to do a spawn 2 action. This one, spawn 2 action, which is going to go this way. That's the one thing. So that's the first thing it's going to do. The second thing it's going to do after it moves is instead of adding this enemy, it's going to add an enemy 2, right? But first I have to create enemy 2. So let's go back to the second layer. Here's my enemy, right? I'm just going to move it over. So Shift D across the x-axis. And this enemy here, I'm going to rename enemy 2. And I'm going to give it a new material. So I'm going to go, instead of this material here, which is, I'm going to call this material orange. I'm not going to kill that. I'm going to add a new material in there. And I'm going to give it a new form, red. And make it very specular as well. And add in a new material. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this material up and kill this material so it goes away. Okay, good. So now this material is red. And just to see it, I'm going to add a new camera. A new lamp, so we can see what it looks like. Point lamp, just to see that what my material looks like. So one's red and one's orange. Okay, this one's called enemy 2. This one's called enemy. Okay, Igor, watching? Enemy 2, enemy. Different kinds of things. Okay, let me go back to my spawn 2, which is the new spawning point. Here's spawn 2. Instead of spawning enemy, it's going to spawn enemy 2. Right? Now they're going to go like this. Right? Crisscross over each other, through each other. And there might be a time where both spawn at the same time in exactly the same space. The way to prevent that is to change my seed for my spawn point from 1 to 2. Now it's a different sequence of random numbers. Each seed is a sequence of random numbers. Right? If I change my sequence, it'll spawn at a different rate. Okay? Let's go back to layer 1 and let's see if I can impress Igor a little bit more, right? Because that's what my goal today is if I can impress you. Let's see if I can do this. Last day is Matt. I tried to impress Matt. Today it's Igor, right? Next day it's going to be somebody. I'm trying to maybe I'll hit Vanessa if she comes to class, right? Let's say Pete, right? Let's see how this works. So here's my red with my blue, and there we go. Different ones, right? And now they're coming at me. I've got my orange ones, and I got my red ones. And they're going to come at you at different speeds. They might have different points. They might have different values, right? And they're coming at different times.
How to make one of them come more often than another?
Change the values. Right now my random skip is 60. Right? See, I'm skipping 60 for 1, for 2. If you want me to come sooner, I can go to 30. Watch. So 30 for the skip, right? And now you're going to see that the red ones appear more often. Right? See? Twice as often, actually. So I can make the more red ones, less orange ones. Okay, if I want to make it really interesting, right? I've added 2 of them that go this way. I can make other ones that go this way, forward and back, right? I can make one that goes like this, an arc, right? You can do whatever you like. The spawning points, you can have as many spawning points, and it can make it look as random as you like, right? You can also make so that the spawning point moves with the player. So if I move over here, the spawn's in front of me. Remember what we did last time with the plot follow? The idea of us doing a path. So I can move over here, it's going to follow me over here. Move over here, it's going to follow me over here. It's going to try and spawn in front of me every time with a bit of a delay. I can program in a delay so it doesn't follow me so fast, right? But it's going to try and get to me. It's going to try and create stuff in front of me to make it more challenging. So that is, my friends, the way we spawn, right? We can do spawning random things. Okay, what about if I finish a level and first of all, I've got to create my character. So if spawn hits me, if I get hit by enemy 1 or enemy 2, right? both of those enemies can have their own unique, the same value, which is enemy. Or I can give them different different values. One maybe takes more, gives me more damage than the other one. For now, let's make them the same. If I get hit, I get hurt. And if I get hurt, what was that? Same property. Yeah, but they won't share the property. They'll each have a property. Think of them as different classes right now. So I've renamed them, right? And they've got different properties, right? So if I go back to layer 2, I've got 2 objects. And I can add a game property to this one, right? And I'll call this thing enemy. Same as I'll call the other one. Let's make sure I got the same word. And I'll make this Boolean. And I'll check it on to make it true, right? And I'll do the same thing for this one. Add a game property, call this enemy. And I'll make this Boolean. And I'll go 2, right? Good. So I got both of them. Now I've got my enemy. Now I'm going to go back and make my character. My character can only move left and right for this game. And my job is to catch the enemies. So I'm going to try and hit the enemies. The more enemies I hit, the higher my score. Okay, when I get to a certain score, I go to the next level. Nice and easy. Okay, so let's make my character. So I'm going to Shift A. I'll make a new mesh. It'll be a... I'm trying to make it easier for us. Let's make it so it's a cylinder. And we're going to rotate the cylinder, right? But hear me out now. If I want this to be done right, do I want to rotate the cylinder here? Or do I want to rotate the cylinder in edit mode? Hear me out. So if I go to edit mode, I rotate it across the x-axis 90 degrees. Right, here's my x-axis. I just make it interesting. And I press tab. Am I rotated? No.
You can also like all day apply.
I could. But watch this. So here's my cylinder, right? This is going to be I'm going to have a new property for my cylinder. We're going to make this into the traditional green property, right? We'll make it very specular too, so it shines. It's a shiny little cylinder, right? And you know what? Instead of making my cylinder the way it is, and I messed up already, by the way. I messed up. I'm so excited about making the cylinder for you, I forgot something. Right? But I'll leave it as is. I wanted to make the cylinder more of a square cylinder, so it kind of popped. It would roll when you moved, right? Okay, here's my cylinder. I want to give it some physics property. I want to make it a character. Here's my character. Okay, here's my character. Right now it's visible. I'm going to give it collision bounce. Right now, if you notice it's square. I can't make it square. I'm going to make it a cylinder. If I make a cylinder, though, my cylinder points up. How do I change that?
Maybe in edit mode. Did you change edit mode?
I could. I go set origin to geometry. That's already geometry, right? How do I, well, you know why it's like this, right? Because my original object is like this, and I've modified it in edit mode. So if I go back to edit mode, there it is, right? It is a cylinder. And I have to align this thing. I have to align the colliders, right? So the way to do that, of course, is to, let's rotate it back for a second. So rotate it across the x-axis minus 90, right? And when I go back into edit mode, now everything matches. Now if I rotate it across the x-axis 90 degrees, so does everything else. But then now look at this. My rotation is here.
Do all down.
What was that?
Alt
For rotating without this, without transformation?
yeah.
Let me just undo. So you're saying Alt R?
After you rotate.
Oh, after you rotate. Okay, sorry. So rotate across the x-axis 90 degrees, and we'll press, do we have before I press enter or after I press enter?
Enter after pressing.
Enter and then Alt R. Clear transformation. But yeah, but that clears it. It goes back to normal. That's not what you do. So I think it's something else. Maybe it's Shift Control R, Shift thing. So I want to clear the transformation. So if I go back, because it'll affect my movement. But anyways, let's leave it as is. So let's go rotate across the x-axis 90 degrees. There it is. So I want it to roll like a barrel. Oops. All right, so this is my character. I want to roll this guy. First of all, let's see how it falls. There he is. And now what's going to happen is, if you notice, he's falling too. and they're going to bump into him, and they're going to push him off, right? Until he's off the screen. So how do I stop him? How do I stop this guy from falling off the screen so he can't move back?
Friction or something.
I can increase his friction a lot, so let's do that. So let's go to here, and right now his friction is 0.5. I can turn his friction way up. Let's see if it falls now. Still. Right? And what about other things like damping? How about if I turn that right up and then see what happens there? I got to be careful because if I turn this up, he won't move very well. And what am I falling at? What's the rate that I'm falling at? Like it's going to fall forever until I go down, right? Okay, let's change that. So what's the other thing I can do instead of turning up friction and stuff? What are the other things I could do?
Decrease mass.
What was that?
Decrease mass.
I could do that, but the easier way to do it is to create a barrier. No, to create a barrier that only my character will collide with, right? But not my spheres. How do I do that? How is it so that I can make it so the barrier, it collides with my character but doesn't collide with my sphere? My sphere is an object, right? But I want it to just pass through. I don't want it to collide. I don't want it to be an object to collide with. How do I do that? So when it's near this thing, I can also change. The other thing I can do with my character is I can change its. I can add a constraint on the y-axis, so there's no y movement at all. Let's do that. So here's my character. The first thing I want to do with my character is stop him from rolling down. And I'm going to use, in my cylinder, let's change this from a cylinder, let's change it to player. That's my first problem, right? I got to stop him from rolling down. So he's going to add in, we're going to add a sensor in there. It's going to be an always sensor, right? Always constrain him. Always add a constraint, right? That dampens his movement across the y-axis. Right, now we got to change this because it's going to pop up to the y-axis in a second. Well, he's actually on the y-axis. But that's not what I mean. I mean, is it across the x-axis? No, the y-axis. So I want the y-axis, but I don't want him to go more than, he can't go lower than this level, and he can't go higher than a certain level. We'll have to modify that in a second. You'll see what I'm talking about. So he can roll this way, but he can't go this way. Okay, so I'm modifying him, I'm limiting him on the y-axis. So he's not going to slide down. Okay, that means it'll probably put him in the middle in a second. Okay, let's try this out. And I'm going to add the constraint. Put him in here like this.
It's activated always.
Yeah, always. Always have a constraint. And let's see what happens. Now he's up there. Take a look. How come he's up there? We talked about this last time. Look what this is. Here's it. If I press play, it goes up there. How come? Because the constraint moves into the 0, 0 point. That's what I've told him to do. My constraint that I've created, it says minimum is 0, maximum is 0. Where is his location right now? His location is -5, right? So minimum is -5, right? Maximum is -5. I want him to be around the -5 axis. So here, let's do this. So minimum -5, maximum -5. -5 to -5. Let's press play. Now he's there. And he's never going to move from there. Take a look. He's not rolling down. No matter what happens, he's staying. Right? There's nothing they can do to stop him. Right? He's always going to be there to stop these things from hitting him. If he just sits there, he'll get points. Right? But that's not the name of the game. The name of the game is for him to get as many points as he can by rolling around. Right? Okay, let's do that. So now let's give him the ability to move. So that's his first constraint. He can't move. And now I'm going to add a keyboard sensor for left and right. So it's going to be his A key first. We'll make this so it's the A key so we can see what it is. Right, there's my A key. And now on the right side, we'll add a motion sensor. Okay, what kind of motion am I giving him? Character motion, simple motion, what am I giving him? If I make him character motion, right, it actually changes his physical location. What if I gave him you know, something more interesting than simple motion? Simple motion is the same, right? It gives him just location. I'm never going to make this guy jump, right? So that's not going to make any sense right now. Or what if I change this guy from a character to dynamic? So if I go to dynamic, one of those, right? Well, when I make it dynamic, I can add force to my dude to move him around, right? So now it's simple motion, but I want to move it to the left, so left motion. Okay. How much force do I got to give him to nudge him to the left, right? If I want to make him roll. So I want to give him force, negative force on the, or linear velocity, sorry, on the, across the x-axis. I want to give him a linear velocity of -2. Let's see what that does. So I press it, and I'm starting to roll. Take a look at it. I'm rolling, but it's going so slow. He's not rolling too fast. So let's give him a linear velocity of -2. See what that does. And then press play. And I'm rolling across. And if the idea is if I roll across too much, I fall off into oblivion. I don't want that. Let's really give him a little bit more speed. So something that's uncontrollable, like a -10. All right, let's try this out. P. Oh, and he keeps rolling until he falls off. So I got to be controlling my my descent. All right. Let's give him -20, so it's even faster. Make him really challenging. So P and see if it's too challenging. Oh yeah. So it'll roll off. Watch. P. Oop. Okay, so that's going to roll him off. That's good. It works. And now I'm going to give the other side +20. And it's going to be torque or linear velocity, as opposed to regular stuff that we were doing before. Okay, let's try this out again. Add a sensor, do a keyboard sensor, add the D key, right? And we'll call this the D underscore key. There we are. And as we go across, we'll add another actuator, and we'll give a little, we'll do motion again. And this time we'll do simple motion. If you notice, now that we made them dynamic, we can add torque again, or linear velocity. Let's add linear velocity of 20, which goes the other way. Okay, we have to add a lot more linear velocity, right? So let's go here, and we'll drag this over here, and we'll do this. And now we've got our game. So we go here, whoa, okay, and I've got a little bit of motion. It's rolling the barrels. So now I can knock these guys off, but without knocking myself off, I got to be careful because it's going to continue to roll when I press the button, right? So I got to roll the barrel, right? And if I'm not careful, I'm going to roll myself off the barrel, right? So maybe the game is not when I hit them. Hitting doesn't do anything, but when these balls roll on one side or the other, and without me falling down, right? It doesn't land in the back, but lands to the right or the left. I get points. So how do I do that? There we go. So right or left, right? I can probably get some of them, but not all of them. And if I go too much, if I let go, it's going to roll me off the thing, and I'll end. Right? So how do I do that? What do you recommend, guys? You guys are part of this thing too. I want to make it so that he only gets points, or I only get points from one kind of ball, but not the other. I can do that too. Like for example, I only get points for the orange balls, but I got to sweep the red balls away, right? So I got to touch I got to touch the orange ball, but I got to sweep the red ball away, right? You wanted to ask something else, right?
Is there any type of constraints that doesn't make object to some coordinates, but it doesn't let him move? For example, if you want to make the balls moving only forward,
you can do that. You can constrain them on an axis all the time. Yeah, I'll show you in a second. I'll come around. All right, let me finish my example here. So let's say I want to knock off. I'm gonna take care of our other friend. We have another issue. We want to move to a new scene, right? So when I knock one of the red balls over on the right side, let's say, okay, a red ball on the right side or any ball on the right side, I go to a new scene. Right? Well, let's see how I can do that. So first of all, we have to think about how this is done. So we have to kind of have some kind of collider, right? Right now, all we have is a plane, a flat plane that's rotated on this side, right? Which is a pretty sharp 90 degrees, okay? So how do I do that? So I'm going to go into Shift A. I'm going to add a new plane, and I'm going to expand the plane. I'm going to move it over here, first of all. And I'm going to rotate it across the x-axis 90 degrees. Let's see if this is right. That's not right. Let's undo that one. Rotate across the x-axis 10 degrees. There we go. So it matches the slope of this thing. So rotate it around 10 degrees, yeah? Yep. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand it with the expand capabilities this way. So it expands out to both sides, right? There we go. So only when I hit it enough that it touches this thing here, that's when I want this thing to, my objects to score. So I only score on the right side. I'm making this up. Okay, let's make it so that it's really thin, so it only can touch the scoring pad. Only some of them can touch the scoring pad, like almost like one of those. So a very thin layer of colliding, right? Now, how is this good? Because if you remember that this is a flat plane, so from a collision perspective, we got issues unless we make it thicker, right? And the other object would be, if we get rid of that, if I go Shift A and I go cube, here's my cube, and let's move it across. So I'm going to go move this across over here, and we want to rotate it across the x-axis 10 degrees, so it's the same angle. And let's make it, smush it up a little bit, so we're going to make it so it's a lot thinner, like we said. Right there it is, thinner. And we're going to make this thing so that it expands this way, and even thinner, so this way. So when we touch the bar, if I can get to the bar, right, which we're going to move aside a little bit, make it a little more challenging. If it moves there, if it touches that bar, it wins. Okay, so let's make a new, we'll use a new material, and we'll call this bar, and we'll change the color to blue, just so we know that it hits something else. And this bar here, when any of the spheres hit, as an example, we're going to move to the next level. Okay. So first of all, let's see if we can collide. So we're going to detect a collision. So that's the first thing. Now this has to have some colliding properties, which we're going to do a collision bounce. If you notice, collision bounce are a box, which is going to box around this thing. So when it hits this, it's going to collide. Okay, let me go back to over here. I'm going to add sensor. I'm going to add a collision sensor. It's going to collide with the property that's called enemy, any enemy that hits it, right? And when it collides with the enemy, I want to take us to a new scene. So I'm going to go to scene, and I want to go to, I can add background scene. I can add overlay scene. This is the neat stuff, right? We're going to try these different ones, see what it does. I can set the camera as an example, and I can set the scene. So let's set the scene. All right, and I only have one scene right now. It's scene, right? So let's call this one scene 1, right? Let's make a new scene, right? And I'll call this one scene 2. Here's my problem. What do I have in scene 2 right now? Anything? Do I have anything in scene 2?
No.
Nothing. I need to add a camera, and I need to add some lights, or else I'm not going to see anything in scene 2, right? So I'm going to add a plane. First of all, let's add another plane. We'll make this plane so it looks different. We'll make a plane that looks, we're going to make it so that it's this color pink, a pinky plane. That's very reflective, so we know there's a difference, okay? And we'll call this thing something like, that's almost like a purple. All right, and in here we'll add a new light. So here's a lamp, point lamp that we'll put over here like this, so we know we're at the purple lamp. And we'll add a new camera, Shift A, camera, that right now, if you notice the camera, what's the default view for the camera? Take a look, it's pointing way over there, right? I can shift it over here, right? And I can view, it's my active camera, right? Camera. Now it says set active camera object as camera. I can click active camera, numpad 0. If I go numpad 0, right? Turn it on. It goes there. That's my active camera. So I know that's my active camera, right? So I can go back to where it was. Now I can I can align this thing so I see this plane. So here, this is just for you. So you can see how it shifts from one place to the other, right? So there it is. There's my active camera. So it's going to see this so far. So when I move to scene, it's going to go here. But. This camera, I got a name. Because if otherwise, it won't be in this camera view, right? So here's my camera 1, and this is my camera 2. So make sure that it's correct. Point and camera. That's camera. See, that's camera 1, right? In my scene 1. But if I go to scene 2, and I want to only see the scene, the current scene. So here's camera 1. It's not called camera 1. It's called camera 2. There's camera 2, right? So I'm going to go from camera 1 to camera 2. This plane is going to be called ground 2. And if I want to, this is going to be point 2. I can do whatever. I can call them whatever I like, but they're all inside a different scene. So I can go current scene or all scenes. There's all scenes. So I see different things now. Okay, good. Now, on the bottom, if you notice, there's scene 2, and I can open that up. So they're almost like containers of their own. Okay, cool. So what I want to do is go back to scene 1. And I want to go back to what this thing is going to do. So it's going to drop in. And as soon as this thing gets hit, right, it's going to set the scene. Let's do that. So it's going to get hit by the enemy. When it's hit by the enemy, it's going to shift to scene 2. Okay, let's see what happens when I do that. Right, so press play. Here's the enemy. I can roll this way and that way. Any enemy that rolls and hits that thing. Come on, hit. It's actually harder than you think. There we go, scene 2. See how it shifted? I went right to scene 2, but my control is gone. What happened to scene 1? Is it still running, or is it over? Still running, right? Which means my guy's falling by now. So how do I shift my dude? How do I shift this guy from scene 1 to scene 2? I want him to appear on the next plane, right? And copy him. I can copy him, right, as an example. I can copy this guy and put him to a new scene, right? So now imagine, I want to copy or move this guy. So how do I do that? I go to Object, right, and now, again, if I scroll up, I can copy logic bricks, I can copy properties, I can do all this kind of stuff, right? If I go to View, I go to Cameras, my Select for my patterns, I can add new guys, and I can duplicate objects, Shift D, right? But I want to move this guy to another scene. How do I do that? How do I copy something from one scene to the next? So let's duplicate my object first of all, right? So here he is, right? So my object is duplicated. Right now I want to move this guy to the other scene. So how do I move that guy? So Object, move to layer, right? Convert to, I can move to layer, but the problem is I'm only moving to layer in the same scene. How do I copy this guy, duplicate this guy in another scene? Any ideas? No one's saying any ideas. What was that?
Control-C, Control-V.
No, there's no Control-C, Control-V for this stuff, right, at all. Yeah, there's no, I wish there was. That would be nice. That would make it nice and easy. We kind of understand that's the universal way of doing things, right? I can't add I can add a new thing and do everything else. The easiest thing would have been to do it when I created my scene. That's the easiest thing to do. So I could have created all these elements again and copied everything else to the new scene, everything, my entire thing, and then modified stuff, took things away. It's easier to do that than actually to make this guy appear in the other scene, right? So that's the thing to note. But I can go there, and now I have control of the other guy. I can also end this scene. I want it so that way this scene is over. So it creates a new one, and after this is done, it kills this one. So let's see how we do that. Can we kill a scene? So if I go to Scene, and then this one starts, I have remove scene, right? Suspend scene, resume scene, right? All these different things. So let's just remove the scene. Let's see what happens if I do that. So I go boom, boom, remove the scene. And I choose scene 1. See what happens now. So press, and then it starts coming, right? And as they come up, I want to make sure this works. Come on. Oh, good. And it's gone. So now the other one is gone now. It doesn't resume. The reason why you want to do that is otherwise you have stuff running in the background and you don't know what's going on here. But you can move to a new scene anytime. So that any kind of collision can move us to the new scene, which is our new level, if you will, right? Now the reason why it's not moving properly is because right now, from a camera perspective, I'm here, right? And let's move me into scene 2 for a second. And now my camera is going to be down here, right? So I'm just going to pull back so we see the same property. Here's scene 1, and here's scene 2, approximately. Now the scene 2, I want to rotate this thing across the x-axis about 10 degrees to make it about the same. And you know what? I can add another block. I copy blocks from one to the other. But the challenge is, here's another thing I can do. Can I move from one object to the other? If I shift, control shift, can I drag and drop from one thing, my spawn point from one thing to the other? And the answer is, I cannot. Right? Well, let's try it actually. Let's make a new block, and this is the way I remember doing it before in the old version. If I go to scene 1, I take this one, shift D for duplicate, and across the x-axis, there it is. And now I have player 1, and I want to move this player to scene 2. There's player 1. Let's see if that works. Let's go to scene 2. There he is, right? He's got all the same things from scene 1, and now I can delete the first things. So I go back to scene 1, right? I can kill him, and if I go to numeric transform, I can find his position, which is exactly at 0. Let's put him at 6 just to make it even. Oh no, I'll do -6, like I said. Start him off at -6. And this will be at 1, a little bit lower, so -6 and 1. Okay, good. And now let's go to scene 2. We'll put them at the same position, -6 and 1. So -6, undo. Just this one, -6 and 1, and x-axis will be 0. There we go. That's the exact same position. Now let's try it out. So I'm going to go for scene 1 to scene 2, have the same player. Okay, and let's go back to the first scene and get rid of this. Now we can probably minimize some of this stuff, right? And get rid of toggle this off so we can see our game a little bit more. Take a look, guys. Here's the final demo, right? Let's see if this works. So press play, right? And now these things come. I got my blocks. It's really fast. Believe me, I'm not trying to do this. It goes over here, and now I can do this over here. I'm in the next level. And I keep doing that. Right, so I know this is a new level. If I can't stop myself, by the way, once I stop rolling, I'm rolling forever because I got 20 force, linear velocity on the other side. If I do, it's done. Questions? So again, the way we did this was we created a spawning point. There's 2 spawning points here. Take a look again. 2 spawning points that have animation built in that move literally across the screen. They move together every 10 frames. They change positions pretty much. They just swap positions. And they're moving constantly with a random number generator. So every random number, they're going to generate a random object. You can change the random properties. You need to change the random seed number. They can't have the same numbers, the same seed, or they'll spawn at the exact same time, right? Those kind of things. Those are the things you need to change, and then it'll move to the other side. Let's take a short break, and then we'll finish off with the other game we were playing.